Hi folks, WoodenBoat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Hooked on Wooden Boats, podcast episode number 135. I am your host, Dan Matson, aka WoodenBoat Dan. If you can't do it, nobody can. And this is the world's first podcast fully dedicated, 110%, to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance of wooden vessels around the globe. Thanks for listening today, folks. Great to have you on board. I'm recording this on July 10th, 2014, but who knows, maybe you're listening to this on July 10th, 2019 or 2027. Anyway, thanks for listening. We've got a great episode today. Today is a part 2 of an interview with Jon Wilson, who's the founder of WoodenBoat magazine. Episode number 134 was part 1. So if you haven't listened to that, I'd recommend you start with that one and then go to this part. In the interview with Jon, we talk about how WoodenBoat got started, talk about, actually this year is their 40th year anniversary. So Jon and I kind of discussed by 10-year periods, or by decades, I guess you could say, what was happening at WoodenBoat, how things have changed, what they see for the future. It's just really a lot of fun. Really enjoyed hooking up with Jon, and I know you're going to enjoy the interview, so stay tuned for that here in a couple minutes. Okay, I know I've been talking about my dory a lot, but I'm going to talk about it one more time. So I have decided for sure to sell the dory. So before I sell her, I'm going to get her fixed up a little bit. As I mentioned previously, I've redone the gunnels, which were originally I had put varnish on those, so I sanded that all off, and I sanded off all the epoxy, and I went with a boat sauce, which is basically seafin teak oil and a little bit of varnish and a little bit of dark stain. Rub that on. And now I've actually got the inside parts of the boat out, the thwarts and the floorboards. Got her turned over on sawhorses. I'm going to sand and repaint the bottom and the hull. And then I'm going to turn her back over and touch up the paint inside the boat and repaint the thwarts. And I'm going to get the motor running the 15-horse Merc, so I got to take that to the shop. I'm just going to have them tune it up and service it. So the boat will be in great shape, ready to go on the trailer with the 15-horse, a boat cover, a nice little galvanized trailer. And I've actually, before I sell her to the public, I've let my boys know, and as you may or may not know, I have 5 boys. My wife and I have 5 boys, ages 22 to 29 at this point. And so I've offered her for sale to my boys at half price if they're interested. I wanted to do that before I put her out to the public. I kind of got over the thing. When I originally built her, I worked so hard, I thought, okay, this boat's got to stay in the family, got to be passed down from generation to generation. It's like, okay, I don't think so. I don't want any of my kids or their kids to be burdened with something that they don't want. But on the other hand, I did want to make her available. So one of my boys is interested. We're going to talk about it some more. So if he doesn't buy her, then I will put her up for sale, probably take her to the Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival this September, have her for sale there, and get her up on the Pocket Yacht Palooza for sale. Or if you're interested, give me a call at 425-319-7800. She's a pretty boat. She's worked great, but I don't need 3 boats. I need 2, but not 3. So if I sell the dory, then I'm going to finish the scamp that I purchased that was partially complete, and that'll be my new all-purpose boat. And I may get a little propane outboard motor for her and take her sailing and have some fun and so on. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. So that's what I'm up to there. And, it's amazing. I turned my dory over, and this paint that's on the hull is 17 years old. And to be honest, it's not in that bad a shape. Although where she's been up on the beach and stuff, the paint's kind of worn off. But on the actual strakes, unless she hit something and got scratched off, the paint got scratched off, the paint was in pretty good shape. But anyway, she's going to get sanded down and primed and repainted. And going to go with the green, a little different green than I did before. And she's going to look really pretty and go to a new home. So that's the update there. The Pocket Yacht Palooza is July 19th and 20th in Port Townsend, Washington. It's a small boat celebration, mostly wooden boat, some fiberglass. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to be over there Saturday the 19th with my canoe Chelan. So if you're around, swing by, say hi, let's hook up, talk wooden boats, and have some fun. Okay, I have a newsletter that goes out almost monthly, and if you'd like to subscribe to that, you can. And before I give you that information, here are the new subscribers since the last episode, which you've got 7 or 8 people here. John Herrick, John Daniels, Melind Tamby, Tony Champagne, Carrie Lane, Peter Pearsall, and John Bumpus. So thanks for subscribing to the newsletter. If you haven't subscribed, you can do so at hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. And it's free. I don't do anything with your information except send out an occasional newsletter, which in recent months has been about every 45 to 60 days, kind of give you updates on what's happening here in Hooked on Wooden Boats. It's a way for me to connect with you. And so I would love it if you would sign up for that. Okay, we're going to move on to the interview with Jon Wilson now of WoodenBoat. This is part 2. Again, part 1 is episode 134. I would recommend you listen to that first. Okay, here we go with part 2. Take it away, Jon. Jon, maybe you could just, we've kind of talked about the first 10 years. Maybe if you could just briefly tell us about, the second decade, the third, and the fourth of WoodenBoat, what those were like.
All right. So for the second 10 years, things we concentrated on basically deepening our commitment to the field. That we had started the WoodenBoat School here in Brooklyn, an experiential kind of education summer program for adults on the campus here in Brooklyn in 1981, and that was growing. During those years, we paid more attention to what was happening in cold molded construction. There's a lot of wood composite building experimentation that was going on, and it was looking very successful. People were being able to build fine wooden boats in the cold molded mode, which allowed that sort of monocoque construction method to find its own at a time when really fine quality wood for traditional boat building was getting harder to find, and cold molding allowed lesser quality wood because it was going to be more layers of smaller pieces, counting on resins, particularly epoxy resins, to hold everything together. And so we spent a lot of time focusing on that side of what was happening, because so much was happening around the world, not only in this country, but in other parts of the world. And so some great work was being done, and some great work was being done in plywood. And, we didn't just want to be a magazine about traditional wooden boats. We wanted all sorts of kinds of wooden boats to be represented: old and new, small and large, power and sail, traditionally constructed and constructed in the modern way. We wanted it all. We wanted to be representative of it all. So that second 10 years had to do with a lot of that. And it led to, I guess the third 10 years was maybe more of the same, but also pulling back a little bit as we found more people interested in traditional construction. We had to, the balance was difficult. A magazine that's bi-monthly, as WoodenBoat is, you have to be careful about how you distribute the content, as it were. You got to have enough to interest everyone, and yet it has to be. We have a mission here. We have an editorial mission here, and we want to sort of develop that mission. So we worked on that, and we worked in that sort of area, just making sure that we were doing what we said we wanted to do, and I think it worked. But by 1994, I realized that, this is now 20 years in, I realized that we needed to have some more voices in the editorial side of things. So Matt Murphy, who had begun working for us, as a kind of an associate or assistant editor early on, Jennifer Elliott was the managing editor, and so in 1994, I decided to move sort of step somewhat out of the day-to-day editing of the magazine, and Matt Murphy became the editor, and he remains the editor, and he has done a superb job. And I have my position on, obviously, Matt and anybody. I'm really a delegator, perhaps to a fault. I just want people who really believe in what we're doing to do what they want to do. I don't want them to do what I think they should do. Well, sometimes I do. But, mostly what I mean is that I want them to do what they want to do, and I want them to do it their way. And if it doesn't work for me, I'm going to say something. But mostly, I want them to do what they want to do, because if I stayed the day-to-day editor of WoodenBoat, it would become very, very predictable, I think. I mean, there's only so much energy one can keep up for, ideas. And as the field evolves, I think in a field like this, you just have to keep new energy coming at it. So Matt has provided a wonderful transition, and I think he does a beautiful job, and I think he has a great staff doing a beautiful job. So the third and fourth decades really have been, in terms of the editing of the magazine, have been under Matt's direction more than anything, and Matt really gets it. I mean, he knows. Matt was reading WoodenBoat when he was a high school kid. And the fact that he's now the editor, I love that story, because this was one of his dream jobs as a high school kid, and I'm just thrilled that he's doing it, and doing it as well as he's doing it. He's very committed. I think you've talked to him, right?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, and he's you can see how committed he is.
Yeah, totally.
And he loves it. So anyway, all to say that by the end of the second decade, things had broadened enough that we needed to, I needed to make sure that there were other people applying their heads and hearts to the missions of the company. So that it has continued to develop in that direction. As we, particularly in this fourth decade, is that when we're in the fourth? Yeah.
Yeah.
We're ending the fourth decade, aren't we?
Yeah.
This is why I had to drop out of college. The math thing, Dan. The math
It's like, what
thing,
century is this? 21st or 20th, right?
Right. So anyway, we now that, because the economy has changed so much in these decades, not as many people can afford to do what we all could have afforded to do, or many of us could have afforded to do earlier on. So now there's more of an interest in smaller boats, and while there's still a very robust market for fine and fancy larger yachts, the number of people who can participate in that are much more limited. And also, the number of kind of bargains that can be had in the wooden boat and yacht side of things are fewer. That many of them have been taken up and rebuilt, and considerable amounts of money have been invested in some, and others have just managed these rebuilds on their own over long periods of time. But so the economy has changed the way the whole wooden boat restoration or new construction thing works. There just aren't as many people doing as much, and where they are doing it, I think, is on the smaller side. So that's required, a different way of looking at what we do, because we obviously want to be responsive to what people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis out there in the real world. At the same time, we want to be able to help them look forward with some vision to what's possible. And so determining what's possible, discovering what's possible in these times, these days, in this market, in this economy, that's something we're paying a lot of attention to. And for the last few years, we were as much hit by the recession as anyone else. So we've all had to kind of rethink what we're doing, how we're doing it, and where we're going to go. But I'm thrilled that there is still a robust and deep interest in wooden boats and yachts of all kinds. And there's still a deep interest in, building one's own or repairing one's own. The Wooden Boat School is the kind of the biggest real-world indicator of that. I mean, we have, during the summer, maybe we've had like 700 to 800 people coming in for week-long classes of varying sorts. We offer about 100 different classes. And people are doing everything from learning to build canoes to learning to build kayaks, or to rebuild small sailing boats, or to, build kit boats, or, there are all kinds of classes, or learning traditional seamanship, cruising boat seamanship, small boat seamanship on the water. We have on the water and shop classes. And what we're seeing is that the number of people who are coming to the school is, for the most part, increasing every year. Nothing is like it was before 9/11, 2001, because it seemed like everything was great and nothing was impossible then. But after that, everybody took a hit, and we had fewer students coming that next year, and then it has built very, very slowly over the years since. But this year will probably be one of our best. Last year was our best. So this year promises to be a little bit better than last year, but you never can tell. It might be less than last year. The point is that the interest in the skills and abilities and thinking and people and ideas that goes with this field, those are all represented at the Wooden Boat School, and the appetite for coming to the Wooden Boat School has increased, not diminished. And that, tells us that, there is something right being done here. We're not always sure what it is. We're not always sure what we're doing that's right or not right. But what we do know is that people are hungry for connection to this. I don't have to tell you. People are hungry for the connection to these kinds of boats and what they represent. And some people can put that into words and some people cannot. But when you feel it for wooden boats, that's what being hooked on wooden boats is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You feel it, and maybe you can describe it, and maybe somebody else can understand it, but often it's not the case. It's just something we feel. To me, that's an organic kind of thing that is in us, and we can't always help ourselves, and we can't always prevent it, and we can't describe it, and all we can do is hope to be able to celebrate it and affirm it as we go along.
Yeah, right. Sometimes it is hard to express it to people that don't feel the same way. I don't know if you've experienced that, John, but
a lot. Yeah, you can imagine.
I kind of get excited, start telling somebody about my podcast or whatever, and then I can tell pretty quick, okay, there's not a connection here,
Right.
so we're going to move on to the next topic.
Yeah, and yet for those who are interested in it, I mean, there's like it's like there's almost nothing more important. I mean, it's not to put too big a spin on it, but it is for those of us who really care about it. It's just absolutely a kind of impassioned caring. I mean, it's not even an obsession. I don't think. Of some people it is, but it's more it's like a love. There is a love for this stuff, these boats, and many of the people who are connected with them, and that's something that I think that we deserve to celebrate. I mean, that it's important.
Yeah.
That we can feel this about things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jon, if looking back on the last 40 years, what have been some of the greatest rewards for you personally?
Well, I guess just number one, getting through every year, and still being able to get up every morning and know that I can come to work in this place, and we are doing what we said we would do, and we're doing it pretty much the way we want to do it. That is, with a commitment to excellence and integrity, and to education, and to me, I can't imagine working anywhere else. I mean, we have like 40 people working here throughout the company with all the different endeavors that we've got going here. And I mean, this is an amazing community of people, and we're working in an amazing place, looking out on the coast of Maine waters, which at this time of year is pretty good because it's green. In the winter, it's not so great because it's so gray, steel gray. But the pleasure of doing this, of being able to produce something like WoodenBoat for all these years, that is so widely appreciated by our readers. And that does not to say that readers don't have criticisms to level at us, and we're listening. I mean, when people say, why are you doing this? That's important to us, whatever they say, because we know that we can't satisfy everybody all the time. And it matters that it matters to them to tell us what they like and don't like about WoodenBoat. But there is absolutely no substitute for the gratification that we feel just being able to do this, just being able to have people appreciate this. People say, whether it's about WoodenBoat magazine or WoodenBoat school, that that has changed their lives, and that I believe that's true. I mean, I'm not trying to make something greater than it is, but I think I understand what it feels like to read something that is so cool. I mean, it's just so amazing to know that somebody is doing this in some state or some country, and it's just so cool. I mean, it is a way of being in the world that sort of celebrates craftsmanship and integrity and human endeavor and human love. I mean, the gratification that comes from that is really, I mean, that's what keeps me going, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jon, what does the next 10 years look like for WoodenBoat, you think?
Well, I think that, this is something that we happen to be paying a lot of attention to right now. What are we going to do? How do we navigate these next 10 years? What will people want? What is changing? What is, how is the digital universe going to affect WoodenBoat? Because, we're biased, of course, but we love holding a magazine in our hands. So we've been fortunate enough to find that many readers want both the print copy and a digital subscription. So many readers buy a combined print and digital subscription, which is incredibly interesting to me, because what they tell us about this, by the way, is that they like having the thing itself, the magazine itself in print, in their house. But they also like, when they're traveling or something, that they can bring it up on a laptop or an iPad or a phone or whatever they're bringing it up on, some device. In case they want to check out something, or in case they hear about something that's appeared in the copy that they haven't received in the mail yet, because that sometimes happens as well, especially with the foreign subscriptions. So we're paying a lot of attention to not only the medium, how we can make sure that people can get this by print or through the digital portals, but also what it is that people want now. The economy is quite different from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and 40 years ago. How we look at what we want is different. So, there are lots more options than there were in the past. So we're still trying to figure out how we navigate the next 10 years. But it has a lot to do with scaling back a little bit, that people are looking at smaller boats, more diverse boats. There are everything, I'm talking about everything from windsurfers and stand-up paddleboards, which are being done in wood, to small beach cruisers, to small camp cruisers, to more versatile motor sailors, small motor sailors. We're just paying attention to all the different things, all the issues that we have to think about in our country and in our economy today. There's an aspect of wooden boats that applies for those people who care about wooden boats. In other words, nobody has to want or think about the same old wooden boats that they've been thinking about if they don't want to think about that. We want to answer their yearnings for new aspects of wood, because what that offers is an opportunity to create something yourself, maybe more than anything else. A wooden boat, the idea of a wooden boat offers one an opportunity to build something him or herself. One doesn't have to be limited to what can be bought in a boat lot or in a, somewhere off the shelf, as it were. And that kind of ability to create something custom tailored, something uniquely designed and constructed for one's own use, that's where a lot of the potential in wood lies. And so we want to make sure that we're celebrating that and encouraging that kind of creativity. So, for example, the Matt, among other things, Matt has started this sketchbook series in WoodenBoat, which covers, somebody has a dream for a boat. Somebody has a dream for something that has never been tried quite this way. And so we get a couple of designers to try it out, just sketch out this idea. Well, there are hundreds of ideas like this that deserve to be kind of sketched out by somebody who's thinking in unconstrained ways about what could we do with wood along these lines. That's what we're thinking about.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Yeah.
We got cut off there on Skype, but we're back now. And John, what I was asking was what you guys are doing to celebrate your 40th anniversary this year.
Oh, the 40th anniversary. This is really it's a slightly complicating for me. It's exciting, and we want people to come and sort of enjoy themselves here. I'm not good at throwing parties, but luckily there are people here who are good at it.
Okay.
Yeah. So what's happening is we've got a kind of an open house weekend in mid-August, August 14th, 15th, and 16th, in which we basically on the WoodenBoat website we basically just said, come on up, and enjoy. We're just going to throw the campus and the office building kind of open to the public in a way, and just if people come, we'll show them around. We'll give tours of the campus, the school, the WoodenBoat school, the office, and there'll be some kind of cookouts. There'll be some reader-built boats. People can bring their boats here. There'll be some tours of local boatyards. The local historical society has offered to open its doors. It's kind of it's really basically an open 3-day party to just let people see kind of who we are, where we do this, and to the extent it's possible, what it is that we do. And it's pretty exciting. It really is exciting. There's a lot that's going to happen here. We're basically just saying the town is an open house, but people know Brooklyn, especially the WoodenBoat School alumni, they know it pretty well. But people who have never been here will be amazed just to see what this little coastal Maine village is like, and to see that this is where so much happens. And I mean that in the sense of so much happens on their behalf, because what we're doing, we do for the readers. And there'll be some boats in the water, and there'll be boats on shore, and it's just a pretty, I hope, laid back event where people can just enjoy what's here. There are a couple of evening meals that will be, I think, on Friday. There'll be let's see, there's a barbecue, I think. I have to think about this a little bit. Yeah, barbecue on Friday, and then there'll be that's kind of here in the village, and then at WoodenBoat on Saturday night there'll be a lobster dinner on the WoodenBoat property in either outside or in this pole building that we have. And we don't know who's going to come, but anybody who wants to come and wants to sign up is invited to participate in those meal events, and people can just show up and just wander around or be part of the little bits of tours. It's just basically an open house weekend, you might say a homecoming weekend in a way, just kind of to celebrate and say thank you and meet anybody we haven't met and to see friends that we haven't seen.
What were those dates again, John?
August 14th, 15th, and 16th.
Okay.
Here in Brooklyn on the WoodenBoat campus, and then also up in the village. There'll be some things going on in the village. Just kind of, the village will, is kind of getting on board as well. So it's a pretty cool scene here.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, very good. So if people were going to fly into Maine, where do you fly into, John?
There are two main cities in Maine are Portland and Bangor. So Portland is south and west of here, and it's about 3 hours away. Bangor is about an hour north of here. So either of those cities works. Portland is somewhat easier to fly into, but then you've got a longer drive to get here. Bangor is, it has a great airport, but it just doesn't have as many flights as Portland does, as many airlines.
And are there places to stay there in Brooklyn?
There are a few. There are kind of B&Bs around, and we have. Let's see. I think maybe on our site there might be some help on that. I actually can't remember. But it would take, there are cottages around. There are no big hotels or anything like that. In fact, the Mid-Coast area has a number of hotels. We're about an hour from Acadia National Park, so there are hotels that are half hour, 45 minutes from here, or an hour from here. Plenty of them, but there are inns and small B&Bs here in the Brooklyn Blue Hill area. We're on what's called the Blue Hill Peninsula, and Blue Hill is the kind of cap crown of the Blue Hill Peninsula, as it were. And there are a couple of inns there as well, but it's pretty limited accommodations right in the immediate area.
Okay, very good. So, John, a couple of questions for you personally. Do you have any wooden boats yourself? I'm sure you do. And do you get out on the water on those?
I do, and I don't get out on the water enough on them. I have my two primary boats are. I have a Concordia 33-foot sloop, which was the predecessor, the first draft of the pretty famous Concordia yawl. She's a great boat. I've owned her since 1982, and I love that boat. I keep her mostly here off WoodenBoat, but sometimes up at Center Harbor if the weather is. We have sort of an exposure problem to the southern, so we have to be. Sometimes if the wind blows up from the south, we have to. I tend to move her up into Center Harbor. Not always, but sometimes. That's the cruising boat that we get out on. Not enough, but we're lucky to have anything to get out on, so I'm not complaining. And then I have a 1967 Chris Craft Cutlass, which was Chris Craft's first attempt at a plywood lapstrake fast boat, and I bought it a few years ago it was kind of a late life crisis, is what I call it. It was kind of like having a hot rod. So I had some rebuilding work done on it. A friend of mine did some work on it, and I kept the old engine, which then didn't work, so I put a rebuilt version of the old engine in, and which I thought would be a great idea. But I mean, it's a 1967 engine, so it's it challenges me. Plus, I'm used to sailing, so the idea of not being able to get home if something goes wrong with the engine is really unnerving for me. But it's a 22-foot fast boat, and so we roar around in that once in a while. And I also keep that down here off WoodenBoat. And then I have a couple of Peapods, one that's mine and one that a Peapod is like a 13.5-foot double-ended boat, Maine Coast type. I had one built for my son when he turned 11, and I still have that around here. He lives out in California. And then I have my own Peapod, which is a wonderful rowing boat. And what else? Oh, a couple of prams, a nutshell pram, which Joel White designed. That was the first one. I had the first one built for my younger son. Great boat. And then WoodenBoat has a lot of boats in the water, a whole variety, from small prams to we have a 28-foot Friendship sloop that's used in classes some years, sometimes not. We have a lot of Herreshoff 12.5s. Those are 15-foot Nathaniel Herreshoff designs, and we have some Joel White Haven 12.5s, which are a centerboard version of that. But all these boats are on moorings off the WoodenBoat property, and it's a pretty great sight to see. And so yes, I have a bunch of boats, and and no, I don't get out on any of them enough. But I realize it's my choice. I'm kind of a workaholic, and I can't seem to help that. I'm getting better at it, but I'm not really good at it.
Yeah. So what do you do for fun, John?
Well, sailing is definitely the most fun in the summer. That we love. Cruising. We'll go off for a few nights, and really love that. Other than that, my wife and I travel to music venues. We are great fans of varieties of music, and art. My wife is a painter, and I'm a sort of a closet wannabe figure sculptor. So we go and see art whenever we can and listen to music whenever we can, and we do enjoy traveling. I end up traveling I have another sort of pursuit which puts me on the road a lot. I work with crime victims, and I end up having to travel a lot for that work. So I do a lot of traveling. Not for fun. It's not. I can't say it's for fun, but it's work that I love. So I guess there's certainly pleasure in it, even though it isn't always fun.
Yeah. Now that's the acronym VOD comes to mind, John. I can't remember what that stands for.
Okay. VOD stands for Victim Offender Dialogue, and Victim Offender Dialogue is a process by which, and the way I practice it is that it's victim centered. It's a process by which a crime victim and I only work in crimes of severe violence, but a crime victim can ask to meet and talk with the incarcerated offender in that case, usually many years after the conviction. This is a victim's service that's provided by many states, about 31 states in this country. So there are still obviously 19 states that don't provide this, but for some crime victims, and I'm talking about survivors of, like homicide victims, a family member who survives a homicide victim, that family member might want to talk with the man or woman who murdered the victim. They might be a direct survivor of attempted murder, a direct survivor of sexual assault, either as an adult or a child. Sometimes child sexual victims want to meet and talk with the offender who may have been, should have been imprisoned, just to say some things that they need to say and to ask some things that they need to ask. So what I do, I am a facilitator of those victim offender dialogues, or VODs, and I prepare the survivor and the offender, who must agree to participate in this. He can't be forced to do this, and must be willing to acknowledge responsibility for the crime. I prepare them over a long period of months for a one-time, hours-long conversation about the crime.
In person, John?
In person, yeah. So basically the victim, most of whom are women, that is to say, the victims who want to participate in a VOD, about 80%, almost 85% of them are women. And most of the offenders, maybe about the same percent, probably more than like 90% of the offenders are men. And the victims they request to have this conversation, and the offender has to willingly say yes, has to acknowledge his role in the crime, role and responsibility. But, the survivors, the victim survivors and the offenders both need help figuring out what it is that they really feel and what they want to say about what they feel. So I, as a facilitator, help them do that. And then finally, when they're ready, we go to the prison where the offender is housed, and we sit in a room, the three of us, and the survivor gets to say and ask what she wants to say and ask, and the offender gets to respond. And it's usually these dialogues usually are 5 or 6 hours long, sometimes longer.
Wow.
Sometimes shorter, but mostly they're, I suppose the average is around 4 hours, but
yeah,
mine tend to be around 5 or 6.
Does it help them bring closure, a little bit of closure to things, John?
They don't really like that word, but in fact is one of the best words there is for this, because they basically get to close a chapter. Most of these survivors have been profoundly wounded by this loss, either directly or by the loss of someone to violence. And so the trauma and post-trauma that they've suffered has had little place for expression. For instance, many of them have been through therapy, and that they hoped that going to therapy would help them, quote-unquote, get over this. And for some of them it did, and for some of them it didn't. And for those for whom it didn't, they ended up feeling like, I just need to talk to this guy. I just need to tell him what he did to me or to us. And I need to understand why he did it. If he can tell me something about why he did it, I need to understand that. That's basically what happens in these dialogues. They have questions they want answered, and they have things they want to say. In some cases, there are, people who actually intend to forgive the offender in their cases, but those are very, very much a minority. And sometimes those people who intend to forgive decide not to forgive when they meet with the offender.
Wow.
And sometimes they don't intend to forgive, and they do forgive. But forgiveness is not the goal, although some people like to think of it as the goal. It's not. It isn't really. It's a way for survivors to feel heard. That's what they need the most, and that's what I love to help them do.
Oh, that's awesome, John.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate to be able to do it. I've been doing that for about 14 years, so that occupies a lot of my time as well. So I'm here in my office at WoodenBoat every day, a place I love and with people I love. But I'm traveling once or twice a month to places where survivors and offenders are. So at any given time, I've usually got 3 or 4 cases. Right now, I have 4 cases. I go to different states for this work. This is all pro bono. I started a small nonprofit called Just Alternatives years ago, and so that work is done under the aegis of that small nonprofit.
I see. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time today, John, to talk about the history of WoodenBoat. It's very fascinating. And
it's a pleasure, Dan.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to say to people listening today?
Well, I'd just like to say thank you to you for doing this, for doing Hooked on Wooden Boats, for caring about them, for wanting to celebrate and share your own feelings about these things. It's a great thing. So, I just hope that I know it's a labor of love, and that's the way it is in some of these things that we do, and that means a lot. So I just want to salute you for doing it, and I appreciate your calling, and I appreciate the chance to talk with you and your listeners.
Well, very good. Well, thanks a lot, John, and we'll chat for a second here after we stop the recording. So thanks again.
Right. You're welcome, Dan.
Okay. Thanks again, John, for spending the time to do the interview. It was really fun to hook up and talk about how WoodenBoat got started. And I think as many of us understand and know, WoodenBoat has played a huge role in the survival and continued interest in wooden vessels around the world. So that's pretty sweet. I would hate to see that die off, and I don't think it will. I think there's always going to be a group of people that appreciate wood and its virtues and benefits and the craftsmanship that goes into building handmade wooden boats. I just think it's awesome. So anyway, thanks again, John. Appreciate it a lot. Okay, if you'd like to connect with me, you can shoot me an email, dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. You can subscribe to my newsletter, as I mentioned earlier. You can leave comments on my website, hookedonwoodenboats.com. And you can connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and YouTube. I've got some YouTube videos up on various topics. You might have some interest there. And you can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And if you enjoy the podcast, I'd appreciate it if you give me a 5-star review. And any constructive criticism is very welcome also. If you'd like to help support the podcast and you make purchases on Amazon, if you go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/Amazon, that'll redirect you to Amazon's site, and if you make any purchase within 24 hours, I get paid a 4% commission, which is greatly appreciated. Or if you go to my website homepage, there's a button on the right-hand side where you can click and make a tip if you would like to do that. It costs me, $100 a month or so, $200 a month to keep the podcast going, so any help there is greatly appreciated. I love doing this, and I plan to continue. So have a great week. Keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. WoodenBoat Dan over and out. God bless.